My name's Warren DeVries, and I'm the Dean of the College of Engineering and Information Technology. I'm delighted to welcome you to the first breakfast of UMBC's 2008-2009 Visionaries in IT Forum. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our alumni who are here, and we really appreciate your partnership in supporting this Visionaries Forum and overall your support of UMBC throughout the year. For 9 years, this four-part breakfast series has created opportunities for the IT community in the Baltimore, Washington area to generate and share ideas that are critical to business success here. And I'd like to actually thank our sponsors who make the forum possible. The proceeds generated from this forum actually support UMBC's IT-related academic programs and IT initiatives at UMBC. So I know you've been watching this all morning, but I want to just personally thank City Financial, Constellation Energy Group, the Greater Baltimore Technology Council, Lockheed Martin, T. Rowe Price, and Xerox, who are our main sponsors, and we really do thank you for your support. Just a couple of minutes, I'd like to give a little bit of an update on recent news and events at UMBC. It's been a great year. Actually, our overall enrollment at UMBC topped 12,000 students, and actually of that, we've got about 9,500 undergraduates and over 2,500 graduate students. Actually, in the College of Engineering and IT, we've got this current year more than about 2,300 students and over 800 graduate students. So IT is an important piece of UMBC, and actually, I'm pleased to report that it actually has grown in this past year. So it's a great thing. So we do actually have this overall strength in IT that supports the overall science, engineering, technology, and math as an important footprint for UMBC in the state and in the community here. About 20% of the degrees that UMBC gives, that are earned, go to people in IT fields, and also if you look at it, the number of graduate degrees that are produced by UMBC actually is a pretty big fraction in this area. This past summer, we were really pleased at some of the great national recognition that UMBC received. I hope a number of you saw this article in U.S. News and World Report, their report on 2009 best colleges, where UMBC was ranked as one of the top 5 national universities recognized for its innovation and identified as one of the schools to watch. We're in the top 5 with a great group of other innovative institutions. We're also ranked 2nd in the Princeton Review's most diverse student population list, reflecting actually the rich variety of backgrounds of the talented students, some of whom are here with us this morning. And it's actually, I'm sure, one of the other important reasons why you want to come to our forum. And actually, this is an opportunity for those of you in the business community. We just completed the 5th building at our Research and Technology Park at BW Tech at UMBC, just down the road a little bit. It's the home of about 50 IT and bioscience companies, and actually a little commercial. If you're looking for space, there's office space adjacent to our vibrant campus, and we would actually ask you to think about that. We'd really like to engage business and industry more. On our research front, UMBC faculty are leading a 6-university team of who received an award, what's called a Muri Award, to do research in overall activities in information, both sharing and keeping it secure. It's about a $7.5 million award where UMBC faculty are in the lead. Our partners in that are Purdue, University of Michigan, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, as well as the University of Texas, Dallas, and San Antonio. We're really pleased that the intellectual capacity and innovation of our faculty allowed us to lead this wonderful team. We're also pleased to talk about some of our special initiatives to, in fact, expand entrepreneurship and increase the diversity of our student body and our campus, specifically the advanced program to increase opportunities for leadership and professional development for our women faculty, and also CWIT, UMBC Center for Women and Information Technology. These are both very important things to, again, build our faculty and students so we look like the 21st century. And these are just a few of the things going on at UMBC. We want to continue to work together with business, industry, and government in the technology communities, and make advances in IT, and work to support knowledge, the knowledge economy in the state of Maryland. So I think this is actually a great forum for us to think about what's going in the future. And I'm really pleased now to be able to introduce this morning's speaker, Mr. Jazz Tobaccowalla of Wyeth Pharmaceuticals. We're delighted to have Jazz with us to help us think about this role in the future economy. Jazz's current position is Vice President for R&D Information Systems at Wyeth Pharmaceuticals. He's driving the company's IT strategy to meet the goals of Wyeth as a global R&D organization. He's accountable for integrating R&D systems with the supply chain and commercial systems to bring significant improvements in productivity and enhance compliance. He's also responsible for the Document Management Center, Center for Excellence, the Wyeth Web Development Center, and the Business Process Management and Application Integration Group. In his previous responsibilities, Jazz was the Vice President of International Information Systems and Global Systems, where he directed information technology programs for Wyeth affiliates actually completely around the world, and responsible for centers of excellence in business intelligence, global document management systems, and, as I indicated earlier, the Wyeth Web Development Center. He also led e-business, the technology group at Wyeth, and served as the program lead for the Pan-European ERP system implementation. Jazz holds an MBA from the Stern School of Business at New York University and a Bachelor of Science from Ramapo College in New Jersey. So please join me in welcoming Jazz Tobaccowalla as he shares his insight and perspectives and talks about collaborating in tomorrow's global research organization. Jazz?
Good morning. First of all, I'm going to apologize for this wheezy voice I've got right now. I've been fighting a cold for about 2 weeks, and the cold is winning. But hopefully, with a mic and everything else, you guys can hear me. First of all, Dean, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you all for showing up. Never know when you walk in, right? It could be entirely empty. I think the way that it's structured is we've got a little bit of Q&A time at the end, so I'll certainly be happy to take questions as we go along. Before I jump into the topic itself, a little bit about the Wyeth-UMBC relationship, because I think it's important to understand sort of where Wyeth is coming from on this stage. Wyeth and UMBC have had a tremendous relationship in the science field for quite a few years, actually. Our research folks, we've had students coming in, spending summers with us, doing phenomenal work, I think well beyond any expectation that any of us have had. When I joined the research management team about 2 years ago, I realized, much to my chagrin, that we were not taking advantage of the IT side of the work. So over the last summer, we were very lucky to have a few interns come in and spend time with us on the IT side. And I can't say enough about how tremendous that whole venture was. So we're certainly hoping we will continue forward with it. And for those of you who are companies over here, this is having somebody who started as an intern in a company. So this is very personal. Hire them. Bring them on board. They are a tremendous, tremendous resource to any organization. They come in with ideas that you would have never suspected, never expected. And actually, that's how this collaboration thing came along. Me, somebody else, Charlie Gombar, who heads up our part of our operations and research, sitting around literally having coffee one day, talking about the fact that we can't seem to get folks to talk to each other enough. And while we were on it, we started talking about, is it a generational issue? Is it this whole Web 2.0 thing that's coming around? And we said, well, why don't we find out? So we turned to UMBC again, and we said, we need somebody who doesn't need to have a science background, doesn't need to have an IT background. We need somebody who sort of specializes in communications, in thinking. And we'd like to bring this person in to look at how we are working in Wyeth, how we are collaborating in Wyeth, and how does it compare or contrast to how folks are doing it in colleges today. Because we suspected that there's probably a difference here. And I've got two kids, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. An 8-year-old who can wander around the internet pretty much at will, and a 6-year-old who's getting there already. So you suspect that there's this ease and comfort that goes in there, whether it's the MySpace generation or the Facebook generation. And so Molly comes in and does a tremendous job of trying to get our thoughts organized. And what we found actually was different than what we expected. We thought it would be a generational thing. It's not. It's an access thing. Those who really want to go use it tend to go use the services and the technologies, and it's not age appropriate, or it's not, oh, I just started using it because my kids started using it. We couldn't find it in terms of an age issue. It just literally seemed to be those who are comfortable in that space and those who are not comfortable in that space. So part of the talk today certainly is about how to hopefully get people a little bit more comfortable in that space. Okay, so having said that, little context, right? Immediately when we talk about collaboration, everybody jumps to technology. It's not just technology, right? There's this little face-to-face thing. It's rather nice. I could have been a head on a video screen right now, probably not as intimate. And I think there is a place and a reason to have that face-to-face communication. You guys heard, prior to this job, I had international. International basically literally meant everything outside of the United States. And if there was a place where I could have used, not being there in person, it would have been tremendous. But you can't do that. You need to get on that plane, and you do need to show up in person to at least get a relationship established. The goal, though, is after you've got the relationship established, can you hopefully continue the rest of it with some of these other components? So you've got telephone, you've got email, you've got video conferencing, e-rooms, we call them e-rooms, chat rooms, place where you can go put stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. And then comes the slightly newer stuff, instant messaging, blogs, wikis, all things that you've heard. All of these have had phenomenal success in the consumer world, right? I mean, just whether you look at it from a company valuation standpoint, whether you look at it from simply how many users are out there, Facebook. Most of you, hopefully, or someone you know, is on Facebook, right? One of the first things for all the students in here that we do when we're hiring is we go look you up on Facebook. Love the pictures you put up there. But it gives us a sense of who individuals are, because that's what we do, right? That's what people hire. People hire individuals at the end of the day. A lot of our resumes are nicely polished, look brilliant, right? But this gives us a sense of who people are. But what's interesting about the whole Facebook phenomenon is it's become a way for people to simply keep in touch, for people to find each other. I get invites on Facebook, and my Facebook is terrible. I'll say that up front. From folks I haven't heard from in 20 years because they happen to find me. So it's not just about, hey, you know, informing the world. It's one way of informing the world instantly about what's going on. People use it a lot, people use it a little less. Same thing with MySpace. LinkedIn, slightly different, more professional. Right? Now there I do have quite a bit of stuff out there, even though my profile isn't as good as it probably should be. But that's a more professional network, right? And many of you probably have a profile on LinkedIn also. It's become an easy way to have your little Rolodex available, if nothing else. But it's also a great way to actually get introductions to folks that you might want to do business with. So these are becoming phenomenally appropriate ways in the consumer world to go do this stuff. Wikipedia, I'll get the percentages wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, there was some study done that said it's about 90% as good as Encyclopedia Britannica. Doesn't take as many paid people, that's the difference, to actually keep this thing up to date. So why does it work, right? Why does it work? Same thing with blogs. I mean, if anybody's been following this election, there's the mainstream media, and then there is all the blogs out there. And depending on your political leaning, you can ignore the mainstream media completely if you wanted to. Or you can ignore the blogs completely if you wanted to. But it's instant. And I'm not even talking about Twitter and the rest of the stuff that's out there. All of which seems to have not only resonated, but seems to have become part of how we are finding and disseminating information in the consumer world. And why am I drawing the change to the corporate world? Well, the corporate world is different. There's a little line, or maybe a big wall. I'm not quite sure which one. It depends on which corporation you work for. Where we're not seeing these technologies. I'm certainly not. Maybe some of you are. I'd be interested to hear if you are. We're not seeing that same level of adoption of these new technologies. Part of the hypothesis, at least, is there's social norms. We'll talk about that a little bit. There's legal issues, there's regulatory issues, there's company policy, company culture. There was a McKinsey poll that was done recently that I threw the numbers up there. And they said, why isn't Web 2.0 technology, for example, taking hold? And their point was, can't figure out financial return. We've all been through that conversation. You want to put technology in, what am I getting back in return? Can't put a number against it, maybe you won't get it. Corporate culture, experimentation, leadership. So here's a thought for you, right? There's two parts, pretty much, to most of us who work for a living. There's the company me, and then there's the personal me. Hopefully, the Facebook me that nobody's looking at, and the company me that really requires some thought over here. So what happens to the company me? There's an expectation of company culture. I'm sure some of you at least have nice posters that say these are the company values. Respect for people, collaboration. All of those things govern what I say, what I do, and how I behave. Policy dictates that too, right? In Wyeth, at least, when you turn on your computer, the first thing that pops up is an acceptable use policy. And it tells you what language I can or cannot use, what sites I should or should not go to, what information I can or cannot disseminate, how I need to separate myself as a person who works for Wyeth versus somebody who might have contrary opinions. All of that governs what I will or will not do. Then comes the other side, from my perspective. What's available for me to collaborate on? Right? The topics that are typically available for me to collaborate on at work are work-related stuff. Right? What am I going to go talk about? Outside, I might go talk about cars. I love cars. I could talk about cars for as long as I want. I love golf. I could go talk about golf if I wanted. At work, I'm going to talk about process improvement. How much am I really going to want to say in that space? Right? So there's that side. And then there's time. Is there a return that we're providing people for spending time in the quote-unquote collaboration space? I have, since they're recording it, 15 hours at work. Sorry. Where am I going to go spend it? Right? Am I going to spend it trying to literally get stuff done, or I'm going to spend it, quote unquote, collaborating? Because we are not able to show directly the value side. And I think that's where a lot of this stuff truly, truly comes into play. And then there's process. How do I actually go get work done? So let's pause on this one for a little bit. So you walk into a company and they send you through training. They tell you what you can or cannot do, how you should or should not behave. At your end, they're going to rank you and they're going to grade you by how you, not just the work you did, but how you did the work, more and more important today, right? We don't want you running over people while you're getting your work done. That's unacceptable. We don't want you using language that's unacceptable. And it has a direct impact on your year-end rating. So right away, you're cautious, you're sort of looking around, making sure you don't do anything. Then you come in here and you say, okay, you're going to be working on these projects. Jazz, you're responsible for R&D information services. You're looking at the R&D systems, blah, 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 blah. But I've got a background in supply chain, and I've got a background in commercial systems. So should I be going and talking about them? Although I don't have time to go talk about it, even though, you know, the person who I succeeded into this job could have probably passed on a tremendous amount of knowledge, and the person who succeeded me in my last job, I could have looked at and seen what they're working on and said, you know what, I tried that already and it's not worth it. But who has the time? Who has the time to go do it? And I think this is where the change fundamentally has to come. We've got to make it an environment where the first part, absolutely, you don't want people saying anything that they want. I mean, that's just not right. But making sure that the rest of it is available. And then the last one, on process. This, to me, personally, I think is the key, and if you're going to change how people collaborate. One of the things that we've gone through is, which we see is, knowledge leaves. People leave, knowledge leaves. That's an unfortunate fact. So we try to capture knowledge, right? How do you capture knowledge? You tell people, well, go document the programs you worked on. Write down something that's happened. Well, we started changing that a little bit. What we are saying is, and it's not complicated, it's not overly complex. We literally have, for our support processes, for example, we have a follow-the-sun model. So literally, we've got a shop in the US, in Europe, and in Asia that solves problems 24/7 as they come up. The idea now that we've developed, and we are right in the midst of getting it implemented at this stage, is when somebody comes up and there's a call that comes in and there's a problem, You're not allowed to solve the problem by itself if it goes up beyond the first level, right? So first level comes in, problem comes in, they look at what they should do. If they can solve it, brilliant, it's over. If it gets bounced up to level 2, you're not allowed to, quote unquote, solve the problem. What you have to do is you literally have to fill in the knowledge base on what should be done. Bounce it back to level 1, let them solve the problem. Okay? Because if they're reading it and they can solve the problem, you've captured knowledge. We're changing the process of what should be done. But what is it doing at the same time? It's building a knowledge base for us that won't leave when that person leaves. Right? Works great in that particular space. We haven't figured out how to make it part of the process for everything you do. And yes, if it's an emergency, you don't have to write it in. You're obviously going to go solve it. I mean, there's practical elements to all of this, but that's the thought, at least, is that if we can make, quote unquote, collaboration, sharing knowledge, part of the process of how we go get work done, we're going to be way ahead of the game. Way ahead of the game. But it has to change how people think. So one of the things we are starting to think about is metrics around this. Everybody hates metrics. But the metrics being who's contributing, and more importantly, let others who are using that contribution rank it for value. And maybe at year end, we'll look and say, hey, you know, Jane put in 80 pieces of information in there, and she's one of the top ranked contributors in her space. Two things. One, it's sheer peer recognition, which is a tremendous thing to get. It's a tremendous thing to get. And that's what you see in the consumer world a lot. It's just recognition. You go dig that article, right? I like it. It's going to move up in popularity. And then there is literally contribution. Who's putting stuff in? We think something like that will go a long way in providing incentive for people to share. Because we're not only encouraging it, but we're saying, hey, we're going to measure some of it. We like the fact that you're going and doing this stuff. So, other side. Personally, I want to do it. I don't need to do it. I want to be on that automotive site talking about the latest design from wherever. And I want to go lust after that new four-door Lamborghini. Right? I want to do it. I don't need to do it. I can be anonymous if I want to. I can be a raving lunatic and nobody knows it's me. I can be a thoughtful person and nobody knows it's me if I want it that way. It does change behavior. You watch an article, a letter that you send to a magazine, the New York Times, and if you have to put your name on it, somebody can track you down, your voice changes. If you're just ranting in a blog as a response, you have a different persona. I think that changes collaboration. I think that changes how you're going to interact. And then I can pursue unlimited interests. Nobody tells me what I have to go work on. What do I feel like on that day? If I'm interested in cars, I'm interested in cars. If I'm interested in archery, I'm interested in archery. And believe me, you can find anything that you want to be interested in out there. So I can go experiment. I'm not restricted by any boundaries. And time is not of the essence, right? If I don't show up for a month, then don't show up for a month. It's trying to get this balance between this internal and external, because everybody talks about, but in the consumer world, all of this stuff works. Why can't you guys get it in the corporate world? I believe that's why we can't get it in the corporate world. So somehow we've got to get this thing flipped over. Then comes legal. Now, those of you who work in highly regulated environments, pharmaceuticals, financial services, there is a very high legal and regulatory burden on data. We have to retain data and conversations. So if your company policy or your legal analysis says you got to retain email, you may have to retain information, instant messaging services, you may have to retain everything written, the burden on an IT organization is tremendous, tremendous, right? Even though Google says it, storage is not free, right? It really does cost money. And it's not just storage, it's backing it up, and even worse, it's being able to find it when somebody comes in and puts a discovery motion in front of you. So suddenly, a lot of this data has to get translated and be made available. So you've got to find, working with your legal department, you've got to find that balance as to what is truly passing communication. It's a hallway conversation versus stuff that has to be retained and kept for a period of time. Now, there are obviously ways and means of doing this. You don't have to retain everything. It's all around policy. It's all around what is restricted versus what is not restricted. But it creates an additional burden inside the company, which again, consumer world, site blows up, oh well, lost all that conversation. Doesn't matter. But this is important and you can't ignore it. And then the policy, company policy itself. Not that long ago, show my age here, we didn't allow people to use telephones at a company to make personal calls. Forget about international calls, oh my God, not a chance. You couldn't even make a personal call, it's too expensive. It was costing company money and you were using company time. Who cares about that anymore? Maybe on international calls you might, but otherwise. I mean, today, the phone is there and you use it, and odds of people don't even use it. They reach into their cell phone and use their own phone anyway. Well, the same thing is happening on access to data services. We've been blocking data services for a very long time. The network is going to get clogged. If you have YouTube available, that's what people are going to go spend their time, you know, because I missed David Letterman's clip last night and I'm going to go see it. At some stage, it comes back to the core for the company. Are you managing it by access? Or are you managing people by results? And we all say we're managing people by results, but then we throw these things in. Well, maybe we shouldn't, right? Do we really need to block Facebook? Do we really need to block Google Works, or whatever it might be? But a lot of companies do, because we're concerned as to where people are going to go spend their time. Most of us today have our own little devices, right? If I want to go to Facebook, I don't need the company network anymore. I can do it from here. If I need to go wander off and read something, I mean, 3G networks are coming up on phones today. I mean, this stuff, they're going to bypass it. If they really want to waste time, they're not going to go on your network anyway, right? So the question really becomes, you've got to start rethinking that paradigm. And we haven't necessarily, right? And then there is data protection issues. What's going to get out there? That again comes back to training and what you tell people they can or cannot do and common sense, right? If somebody was going to go take your data out, they won't do it by copying it to the Google folder at work, right? Most of them can put it on a CD drive and walk out of there. I mean, there is protection and then there is artificial protection. I'm not saying you open it up to everybody and anybody and do anything you want, but this is another part that is truly, truly restricting usage. However, having said all that, the need for collaboration doesn't go away. there was an ex-boss of mine who, this was going back a few years, but he told me, he said, Jazz, I have lots of data. I just don't have any information. He was absolutely right. In R&D especially, as I'm learning, boy, do we generate data. Whether it's in discovery through high throughput screening, volumes, gobs of data that come into us. Clinical trials, safety data, regulatory filing data in every country and the changes that go with it. It comes at you from every place. You've got to figure out a way, A, of course, to make it understandable, but two, to figure out who should be working on that at the right time. Comes back to that whole collaboration space. It would be nice for us to know consistently this study, this result, this safety effect, doesn't matter where in the world it happened. And we do that today. But we're very focused in those spaces where it gets softer, where it's just information, company information, right? Not trial information, not regulatory required data, where it's obsessively focused on making sure we get that right. It gets a little bit fuzzier. We've got to go look at that. And people are pressed for time. Boy, wouldn't it be nice if I could start my day with what I really needed to know, as opposed to the 80 emails that came in after I shut my computer off last night. True? So if you go, for those of you who use My Google or My Yahoo or any of those personalized pages, the advantage is what? You get to select what you're interested in. If you don't like baseball, don't select baseball. If you like football, select football. And there you go, you've got your football scores. Well, where's that equivalent in the company, right? We don't have it yet. We talk about it. We talk about trying to get personalized data, personalized information, but it comes back to where is that data, how do you collaborate on getting it there, and how do you get it pushed up in the world? And we've spoken about knowledge. That, for me, is the scariest part. So the question is it a generational change? Is it going to take, the next generation that is a little less concerned about holding on to information, that will be happier sharing it? Are we simply, as we've grown up, gotten used to hoarding data because that's what is valued? If everybody knows what I know, are they going to fire me? I hope not, right? I hope I bring more than just that to the table. But I think that's part of how we've grown up, at least how I've grown up, right? Is you say, that's really what I bring to the table. As opposed to, well, if I share it and more people know about it, maybe it'll actually take the whole conversation a lot further. I don't know whether it'll take generational change. Like I said, the effort we did this summer, it didn't seem like it. It didn't seem like it. But there are probably more folks in high school, college today that are a lot more comfortable talking about themselves than we were. There's only so much I will ever put on Facebook. Some of you, not so much. So where are the opportunities, right? Internal, not outside, internal. And we've spoken about some of these. One is, can you get an equivalent of this, of date, right? Which is basically, let people say how much they like an article, how much they like some piece of information. Let it grow in value. Because if your corporate culture is anything like ours, you've got a very vast intranet with lots of information. And luckily we can go search for it and we can find it. But really, out of all of that data, how do you figure out what's important versus what's not? Well, let people rank it. Let people subscribe to pieces of data so that it can come to us. Because these are all hopefully things that enable collaboration. You've got to get people started at some stage. And I hope at least that's part of what you get started. Wikis. We've been experimenting with these. Not as much. Trying to work through legal on this one. But Let multiple people come in and attest to what's actually happening in a project or how things worked, as opposed to that Monday evening, I'm going to send out the project report that's been scrubbed clean of any defects, right? Wouldn't it be interesting if you actually got a version that was made up of project manager and actually everybody else who was working on it? You'd probably get some pretty interesting insights into what was actually happening on the project. But hopefully more important, you'd actually get some fixes to the issue. Because you don't have to pull people physically into a conference room to go have that conversation. I saw this recently. I think it's a brilliant idea. We haven't done it, but I intend to do it. It's a water cooler video conference, literally. So the way they had it was 2 offices, one in Chicago, one in San Francisco. And instead of your classic video conference room, they literally had, by their place where they got coffee, they had a large TV screen set up that was permanently on to an equivalent site in their Chicago office. Permanently on, okay? And people would just walk up, and if they saw somebody having coffee on the other end, they'd stop and have a chat. And when they told me that, I said, really? It works. It works. Think about it. It's about as informal as you can get. But what are you doing? You're replicating where we share a lot of data. I don't know about you, but it happens to me all the time. People come and say, hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee? And it's probably some of the most intense conversation I'm going to have that day. It's out of the office, which is always nice. But it's a little bit more casual. Now think about that, where you're reaching literally across the country if necessary. That one got me. That one I thought was actually quite brilliant. And I certainly intend to put that into Wyeth if we can. Then the other side of it, which is, video conferencing, for those of you who've used it enough times, is actually quite painful. It really is. It never seems to quite work, does it? Right? First of all, it's like the first 15 minutes is, trying to figure out if everybody's on. And then, can you see my slides, and can you see me, and what, should you see the slides or should you see me? And it's almost like you're fighting the technology because somebody said we should use video conference. We've gotten to the stage where half the time we don't bother. We literally don't bother. The phone call works as good as it does. But take the other side, the one-on-one, right? My kids talk to grandma on video conference. That works actually quite well, right? Because it's literally face-to-face. It's not about the big meeting. It's not about trying to figure out who's on, who's not, multi-site. It's, rather than me doing it over a phone call where I can't see you rolling your eyes when I'm saying something, this one I can. And that's part of the collaboration thing, right? You want to be able to read body language. That's an interesting component. I think that works quite well. We've used it, again, personal side, we've used it a lot. Internally, we certainly have not. And then the new one that's starting up is on this whole high-def side stuff. And I don't know if you guys have seen any of this. I think HP has it, and AT&T has it. I'm sure there's a bunch of them that have it. This one, literally, you set up a conference room so that the person on screen looks as if they're literally a part of that conference room. So the conference room literally looks exactly the same on the other side. It's interesting, and it's probably great for specific sites and specific conversations, but it's an interesting space. And then the last one, mashups. And I threw this one in there because this goes back to the eternal struggle that we are having in IT right now. How much of it is what we need to control, and how much of it you simply hand over to the users and let them figure out what is good and what is not. Mashups allow people, in essence, to create their own little version of what works for them and then collaborate on it. One of the neatest ones I saw, I wish I had it when I had my international job, was somebody created one where they took literally, they asked people to just simply take their Carlson Wagonlit schedules of travel, for those of you who get it from there, or American Express, or wherever it comes from, and load it into this website. And from the website, then they created, in essence, a calendar page for everybody in the group that literally said where people were going to be. It was for a consulting firm, so a lot of people were traveling. But it allowed them to do silly things like meet up for dinner because they were going to be in the same place at the same time. Coordinate flights if necessary. Little things. Nothing to do hardcore, it is collaboration in its core essence, but it was collaboration in the sense that we managed to get together and go have a conversation. So I think there's opportunity in that space. So with that being said, I believe I'm on time. I'd love to take some questions, love to ask you folks what works for you, because we certainly don't have it all figured out. Maybe one of you does. Thank you.
You ask me questions, I'll ask you questions. That's how it works. Sure.
Can you comment on two things?
Sure.
One, the knowledge transfer program that you have, having dealt with computer science, IT individuals, they like to fix everything all the time. How's that working? And the second thing is, in your formal reviews, where does communication and collaboration fit in their formal reviews as a priority?
Let me start with the second one first. Collaboration, again, for us, I mean, that's part of our core values that the company talks about. So you literally get ranked in how you collaborate or not, as the case may be. So that one is very literal. Okay. Now it's a soft ranking, right? I mean, if there are instances where you've shown a more than average tendency to collaborate, it tends to get recognized. And part of the way we do it is we've got a lot of instant thank yous, instant certificates that people can hand out, right? That says, hey, this person really went way beyond what they were supposed to do. Those get counted as part of a collaboration space. On the knowledge transfer side, you're right. Most IT individuals simply want to solve the problem, right? And then move on to the next problem. That's core of our being, right? That's part of what we're changing, is by saying you're not allowed to solve the problem. Now, if it's an emergency, sure, you go solve it, but you're not allowed to. We don't want you to fix the problem. We want you to tell somebody how to go fix the problem. It's not easy.
Are they coming along dragging and screaming? Or?
Some, and some are not. You know why, where they're not? Is because they are starting to understand, and it started, let me back up a little. Part of this started when we decided to go to this 24/7 support model, right? Most of our calls used to come to the US, even though our user group was across the world. And what would happen is somebody would get woken up because it was a problem, right? It was a big enough problem, you're going to get woken up. Your cell phone goes off, beepers would go off, and you had to wake up and go fix the problem. One thing people realized very quickly by having knowledge dispersed around the world was they didn't get woken up anymore. That works. Same issue with knowledge sharing. If you teach somebody else, they're not going to ask you about that same problem again. And what we're finding is, while there's some people who truly are just problem solvers, and they tend to be hardcore within our production support area, that's what they like to do, a lot of people want to tend to do other stuff at the same time. They're either in the development groups, they're in business analysis groups, whatever, but they happen to have the knowledge. The more they're not bothered by problem solving, the more time they have to go work on other things. That's the incentive that's working at the end of the day. We lapse into it, no question about it. But it seems to be holding. It seems to be holding. Not in every place in the same way, but the ones where we had the most problem. Now, the other part of it, and it's slightly different than collaboration, but the other part of it is we've started taking a very heavy look at what the causes of the problems are at the same time. So luckily, we're delving into what's causing the issue rather than, hey, fix it every single time and fix it every single time. So both of those things help.
Sorry, you had a question.
One thing we've had a lot of success with is getting people to document things and they don't realize that they're doing it. So we changed our processes, like, for example, there's a status report that goes out once a week on a project, and instead of sending it via email, it had to be posted in a content management system, and they got marked as to whether it showed up or not, and strangely enough, the emails of, hey, if you haven't put in your status report yet, you might want to, those emails went away because they got measured on stuff, and it was there, it was searchable, and then if somebody else had a problem, they could search that information. So it's kind of like, we kind of subverted the whole thing and kind of made them do it, even though they didn't know.
No, I think that's a great idea. We've tried that, and I'll tell you, love to hear back from you on this one too, where it works and where it doesn't work. I think for within a team, getting a collaboration space put up, like an e-room or something else, tends to work quite well. But then you take it a step further where people are across multiple teams. That's where we find it falls apart, because nobody wants to now jump into 7 team rooms to get the status report, right? Blame myself as an example. We've got, I don't know, 80 odd projects running at any one time. The thought of being able to get into 80 team rooms to be able to figure out what's going on those projects is, so I want a dashboard. I want some report that comes out of there. So at some stage, we've got to start constantly pulling this data out so it's appropriate at the right levels. And that's where sometimes, you know, I'm at fault too. I'll say, just get me a combined report. And then now we're back to somebody trying to punch it up and send it to me. So we're trying to drive people, again, change to how the process is. We're trying to drive people away from using email as your only communication mechanism and saying, go look at team rooms, go look at collaboration spaces to go work in there. Yeah, I think that is the future of where you need to go. But somehow we've got to be able to extract that data and make it relevant to the right audience. And we're not quite there yet. So that's where we're looking at this. Can I subscribe to, right, for example, that report? Because out of the 80 projects, bluntly, there might be about 15 that I'm interested in. So can I go simply subscribe to those 15 reports? Those show up in some space on the web to me, and I can go read them, because I'll never go find those 15 reports otherwise.
Right.
But that's what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, what we did was we had to do some extensive work on the back end in our content management system.
Yep.
So that when people checked in a document, a bunch of magic happened. We extracted stuff from the documents to allow for reporting, stuff like that. So the luckiest thing we had was we started with a process that we did on every project, so that I could go into any one of the 15 rooms and they all look the same. So that was an advantage and something I recommend for everybody.
Absolutely. The key statement for those of you who are not in IT in there was, we make magic happen. Okay? Sorry, go ahead.
One of the issues is human nature is negative, not positive.
Yeah.
The whole idea of discovery is usually for some legal process, which somebody's going to be punished. Same thing happens when you do processes like these. People are reluctant to be as forthright. And as soon as you start documenting and tracking,
Yeah.
You probably decrease the flow of information as opposed to increase the flow of information.
I agree. As soon as you know people are looking at it, you start scrubbing it to make it look right. I agree. And that was part of my question on, is it going to take a generational change where we don't care? I don't know the answer to that one. I really don't. What we are finding, though, is, again, comes back to culture, comes back to how comfortable you make people feel, and it's easier said than done, that it's okay to say a project is in trouble, right? One of the things that we look for is if a project status goes from green to red, something wasn't working, right? Yellow is not a bad color. It really isn't, right? It's an indicator that something is troubling you. And that's part of what we are trying to train our project managers on. Again, just a little bit of background over here. At least within Wyeth R&D, in our IS group, we never really had professional project managers in place running our IT projects. you just let people run them, right? So if you were a great developer and you ran the project, you were the PM also. And we've literally created an entire discipline now around pure project managers. And they bring that to the table. They understand the nuance of being able to say things aren't okay. And what then we have to make sure is you don't end up punishing them for saying things aren't okay. So our measures are more around not did the project fail, is did it slip by dates, did it slip on cost, did it slip on, those are what we're interested in. If things are going crazy in the meantime, we'd rather know about those early. But you're right. I mean, human nature says, I'd rather scrub it and present the best point of view. I again, don't know how to fix it other than saying, let people understand it's okay if it's not quite perfect.
It's a company culture too. Some companies embrace that and some don't.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all, I think every company talks about, failure is okay, but it, right? There you go. Nothing more said, right? Part of it comes down to is again, and this is where the R&D side does come into play for us. More and more there is a thought process in R&D that says, you better fail early. It costs us a tremendous amount of money to take a product through way into its life cycle before figuring out it's not going to work. We're better off here making the call and saying, let it go. And we're trying to drive that same thought process into other projects. Call it out early, we made the wrong decision, stop it. Now, yes, if at your end, for the person who called it out early and stopped it, you beat them up over the head for a failed project, it's going to continue till they find another job. So yes. So it was a question up here.
You're speaking about the intra-world of the company. Have you used some of these consumer products with your consumer base and trying to get them to give you collaborative input in terms of why products?
Partly yes and partly no. Now remember again, we are very limited in terms of what we talk to directly to the consumer, right? I mean, absolutely, regulatory-wise and otherwise. There are spots that we do, but again, if you look at the data, most consumers will tell you they don't want their information directly from a pharmaceutical company, right? They want the core data, but they want the discussion to take place in a more, in a non-company forum. So it's a little difficult in that space to get talking directly to consumers. Now, there are disease sites, obviously, that are available where you can have the conversation, where you, in essence, introduce folks in there. So, yes, we do it, but not as much as, say, a pure consumer company could do. But if you think about it, right, Blockbuster might have a forum where you're discussing plasma TV screens and beating up on one versus another. That company that makes those TV screens is not going to really have a site to go do it. So again, I think there's a space that you can work in, but as a company, there's only so much in terms of a direct relationship, at least we tend to have with consumers.
So following on that question,
Sure.
What are you doing at Wyeth to help stimulate that open innovation movement to post challenges that you have internally that you can get outside researchers globally, outside the company to help collaborate?
Well, in research collaboration, outside collaboration is part of the norm, right? So part of what we do, whether it's with, to your point, with advertising agencies where we're working on things, or even more importantly with universities or other places we're working with it, is providing that collaboration space. But today, that collaboration space are typically these e-rooms where you can post documents and you can share things. That's about as far as it has gone right now. What hasn't happened, and this is because of, obviously because of intellectual property and rights and everything else, the forums haven't been set up where you, in essence, post a problem, open it up to the world and say, go at it, right? Now, there's some interesting, there's a company called Topcoder, and I'm sure there's others that do this. Some of you might know this. It's an IT company. What they do is basically they allow you to post a question or a problem, and it's a competition as to who can solve the problem. So you're not limited by any resource you have within the company, in essence, to go solve the problem. And there's a prize associated with it, and you get there. In R&D, it hasn't quite gotten that way because you've got IP issues at the end of the day. If you don't get that covered, we're in trouble.
Just to follow, I'm a Procter & Gamble alum, and they started doing that, which I found amazing. So I get an email that says, here, we've got this issue. Can you help us in the industry that you're in today?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Well, they're doing it, a lot of marketing companies are doing it on product valuations, right? So when you used to have these focus groups would come in and say, I like this bottle design better than this. Now those things are getting opened up, definitely. But I'm not sure it's at the core product level. It's more at the marketing and the decision-making level. What we do, which I'm rather proud of, we do reach out well outside of R&D in pharma in terms of trying to solve our problems. So a lot of our initial risk management, risk analysis efforts have been coming from financial institutions, for example, or Boeing and other places, right? So I think there are places, but they are more in terms of how we go grasp knowledge rather than day-to-day collaboration. I think I'm out of time.
I'm sneaking up on you.
Thank you very much, everybody.